So, in today's analysis of the work that's been done and prototyping, this is the pre-production area. The game has not been currently touched yet, but for what we can see is the pre-work, what we need to set up so we can actually make our game in any reasonable method. Here, I have a rough mind map of ideas of what we can do for the media to give out and introduce people to Nottingham. So some of the main ones, obviously, games, cutscenes and animation, interactable model slash space. Board games is also on here, though as working further and further along, it's been realised that this really doesn't work. It doesn't make much sense to have, but it's still there nonetheless. It was in the questionnaire. So here we can see the actual questions we asked. We have a which age range are you in question, which only one of them will come out to the next answer, as that's the only crowd we care to get an answer from. That is the 16 to 25. How other people interact with media does not affect this. We then ask people to just rank in order the favourite media, or media they're most likely to enjoy when interacting with something, advertising a place, especially when you're travelling to it. So, holiday places, or even take for example the Devolver Games expo they did, where they moved going to an actual expo and placed it with a video game. We got a lot of responses to this. A lot. All of them in the right age range, really, except for one, which is rather funny. That's just because of the circles I orientate within, I'd assume. We then have, in order of our favourite media, we have a ranking. Now we have to set up here that when we use this, Microsoft's Forms has a tendency to actually flip the responses on its head. So the green and red here really should be swapped as percentages. It's very strange, it's really annoying. To prove this, we can look right here. We can see a lot of games are in the top choice, first top result. But in the fourth one, we can see probably board games or interactable environments showing up the most. It's a bit in between there. But yeah, games definitely tops the rank actually. It's just Microsoft not really being able to represent the data properly for some reason. Going back to our PowerPoint, we then had another thing we had to ask people of. So we made a bunch of areas. These were based on both either our own knowledge or the website that we were provided with for Marketing Nottingham, Advertising Nottingham. We had to choose our favourites off of this. So, obviously, as young, not choose our favourites, as young innovating people, we had to design and get a bunch of ideas here. So I originally asked people to give me an area of focus. So we have just one question here. It was ranking five. Not 5 criteria. I misremembered. Ranking a series of criteria in order of what they think is most important. So we have popularity, which translates roughly over to foot traffic, total amount of people there, whether it be people coming into Nottingham or people who just kind of live all the way around Nottingham. It could be a popular shopping area. It could even be what's the road? I can't remember the road. But there is the busiest road in Nottingham town, which goes down from Parliament Street down to the city centre. History, which is historical precedent, forming to the city, things that are important to it. So places like obviously Nottingham Castle, Old Market Square, Lace Market, but even maybe more niche areas like the Maze before that shut down, or Tap and Tumbler, which are both in popular areas one was and one is still, popular areas for nightlife, but also incredibly important in terms of their history with Nottingham gigs and Nottingham musicians, especially the Maze, which is known for having been the first place a lot of old, popular Nottingham musicians played in. Leisure, these are more focused on areas like parks and swimming pools and things like that. Areas that might be more for relaxing and enjoying the day actively rather than going and doing something like shopping, anything like that, going out and drinking. It's a bit healthier. Sports, both yourself and being watched. So yourself, it could be something like going down to an area where people play football, or again the swimming pool where you're swimming and active there. But watching, it'd be things like Nottingham Forest grounds, stuff like that. All these like areas where you can watch sports, the cricket ground, anything like that. Shopping, it's general goods or niche stores. So general goods would be like Nottingham stores that might be large or important just because of how they are, or even maybe fast food places that you can't find elsewhere. The most famous example for Nottingham being Hooters, despite the fact that's more an adult restaurant now. Well, not now, always has been, but that is unique in Nottingham for being the only one in England that is in specifically Nottingham. We then have niche stores. This will be more like stores with a gimmick or stores with a more niche market. Many of those would be things like the vintage stores or many goth stores in Nottingham city centre with clothing and stuff like that, or even homemade stores, handmade stores, a lot of the like little wooden stores, things like that. Nightlife, that will be more focused on areas specifically for things like drinking, music, spending a night out with friends really. Yeah, it's not as complicated as some of the others. Nottingham has a very popular nightlife area, so it makes sense to have it on there. And then natural areas, mostly in touch / surrounded by wildlife, so things like Nottingham Forest or even parks. Just areas where there's lots of green, more of an open space, less man-made maybe. But it allows for people to go out and actually, explore the wild areas of Nottingham, which is like its third most famous thing, so it makes sense that it would at all rate highly. Oh, this one actually was different. This one did it properly. So we have five. So we have the criteria here. We have the most popular. I don't know why this one's different. Actually, I'll have to double check the question types and see why they're different at all because I need to know. But so we have popularity and history at the top, kind of sharing roughly the same percentage. I think it is 36%. First choice 3. So they're as equal, but one of them had more first and second choices, whilst one of them just kind of topped up a bit more in terms of being higher in choices, whilst this one would bottom more choices. This one didn't get a single bottom choice just because history makes sense to be important. It was then followed by leisure and natural areas, shopping, nightlife, and then finally the bottom is sports, being the least popular of it. That's mostly going to be biased towards my circles though, because I am not in circles where there's many people who are very much into sports. We then had to design 3 ideas focusing on the most popular here, so popularity and history are 2 of the ones I'm going to be focusing on. Areas where lots of things are happening or are popular, and areas with lots of historical precedent in Nottingham. So we ended up going with Lace Market. Lace Market's got a couple of very interesting things. Whilst not listed here, Lace Market currently, in the year of 2023, is in the running for the 2023 European Historical Cities Award, putting Nottingham a bit more on the map. It's also very famous for hosting lots of events, and it's quite a surprisingly large area. Whilst most people know Lace Market as the main square, Lace Market also will take over areas like the Contemporary and the National Justice Museum that are very important to Nottingham. It has tons of events. Pride goes through there. The Graffiti Festival goes through there. Lots of things like that. We can also see a couple of ideas for games here. A rhythm game based on the events happening there was what I was originally going to throw out as an idea. This is here, yeah. It also makes more sense if I wanted to focus on the events there, because it would allow me to throw away around into more levels and actually explore that idea a bit more. Hockley. Hockley is less historical and more popular. Hockley's history is actually kind of sad because Hockley was originally a very kind of rough area of the city centre. It wasn't a very popular area. But over time, Hockley has now changed to be the happiest area of Nottingham. It's definitely the most modern. It currently ranks as, again, the happiest. Surrounded by lots of niche little stores and little unique areas. It also has quite a bit of historical precedent with having some of the weirder areas of Nottingham. Mauer Cinema, previously Screen 22, was the smallest cinema in the world. It's not anymore. It's third smallest, but it's a total of 22 seats and a big screen for you and people who you want. Pride also goes again through Hockley, but I think it normally ends up in Lace Market or City Centre. Though I know last year it did actually end off at the end part of Hockley. Also, lots of little stores are around Hockley. It's the beginning of a lot of more niche businesses in Nottingham. And there's definitely a sense of community, especially with things like the theatre being there. And it's definitely one of the more progressive areas since it has things like the sex ed, it's like sex clinics, stuff like that, being like openly pro, minority groups and stuff like that. It's definitely one of the more diverse and forward-thinking areas in Nottingham. The Exchange, incredibly historical area. Originally was part of Old Market Square until it became the kind of higher end area, and lots of rich people wanted to split it apart. It overtakes this building behind Old Market Square, and whilst the inside of it's not very popular, the outside area actually often gathers quite a few people, with lots of non-English based food companies coming over, especially American ones. They often sell just off of the Exchange because it puts them off of Old Market Square, but in a very popular area. It also has quite a few high fashion brands there, which makes it quite important in that kind of area, but mostly the importance of here is the history that it has, especially being tied to Old Market Square, which is next, and also just as historical. But the history of trade in the Exchange and Old Market Square are basically unmistakably important to Nottingham and making it. Same with Lace Market and how that made all of our lace and was our main export for years. This was how we traded it, and that was where we made it. And finally, Old Market Square, which we've mentioned a couple of times. This is probably the most foot trafficked out of any of the areas you mentioned, including Hockley and Lace Market, even during events. Old Market Square is the main centre point of Nottingham. It is where everybody knows and has been. With the council building there and the lines outside the front of that, they're incredibly recognisable. It has an immense history of trade and being a very important area. Some of the craziest history you can find is actually in Old Market Square. The idea here with events and stuff is like looking at more of the random pop-up places, maybe some of the food, because one of the main things about Old Market Square is compared to a lot of areas of Nottingham where there's a lot more things like clothes shops and stuff like that. Old Market Square actually has a tendency to focus more on food and like random little bits, especially with things like the Christmas market, the summer market. They'll often pop up and have the most random little things around them. But the idea for games with each of these, so this would be a rhythm game that should take similar places, like over different areas. This one was a dress up game, which makes sense because it's the main clothing niche area of Nottingham. The Exchange would have been a experience where you switch between a modern and historical version and learn about both versions. And the Old Market Square would have been somewhere where you focused on food and looking at different types of food from around the area, similar to like a Manhattan Time food truck in the Yakuza Metro DLC. We then had I believe, yes, here we go, the questionnaire on this. So we have a couple of pictures here. We have the Lace Market picture, the Hockley picture, the Exchange picture, and Old Market Square. Each of these are being set up with the exact same slides we've just seen, so somewhat smaller descriptions than we've gone over here, but that description of why we chose it is not fully necessary for people to understand it. The rough idea here gets across what we're probably going to use from these areas, despite the other areas of importance to it. We then ask, again, from top to bottom, what your favourite is. Like Lace Market, Hockley, the Exchange, Old Market Square. In under 10 words, we ask people if they could describe why their favourite is their favourite. This is mostly as a deep tool analysis, so we can have a look at seeing why these areas stick out to people, especially since we've had our areas of focus already, so we want to know if they actually translate over, if people are focusing on the other parts of the game and stuff like that. In under 10 words, can people describe why their least favourite choice is there? It's not meant to be is your favourite. Any key details that make it less interesting or put it below others. So maybe it's more boring, it's not for my crowd, it's maybe a bit young, it might be something like that. Rating the top choice out of 10 and then rating their bottom choice out of 10, understanding where they would actually rate these. If they were similar ratings, then we know actually the difference isn't that big and it's choosing out of a selection of either good, middling or bad options. If they were very separate, if one was, say, 10 and the one was 1, then we'd know that the choice here is more split. One's really good and one's really bad, according to the people reviewing. See, this one's done it again. So the number here, again, is actually inversed. Green is red and red is green. So if we look at it, we can see... And it's... Wait, is it? I think it is. I think it still is here. I need to double check. Lace market's definitely the most common. 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the top. Whilst 1, 2, and is for the exchange. 1, 2, and 3 for old market. Hockley is 1, 2, and 3. So it's 3, 3, 2, and 4. 4 going to lace market, meaning lace market is currently the top option. Then old markets, then Hockley only shows up once in the second rating, meaning it's not as popular there. Old market square shows up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Lace market shows up 1, 2, 3, 4 times, which still puts it above. It's like 4 here and 4 here is worth more than 3 here and 6 here, really. And then finally, the exchange is also kicking around up here. Hockley seems to be kicking around more around this area. The lace market finally starts dropping off. There's a lot of Hockleys as a third choice. The exchange also picks up from like 1 or 2 choices back up to 2. And finally, the end, it's mostly a swipe with the exchange. Most people seemingly did not like the exchange idea the most. It was the least popular. In 10 words, we're going to have a look at it. So key words we can see here is like lace market came up in 3 respondents. Not everybody who reviewed, I think, actually put... Wait, no, they did. Never mind, ignore me. So 3 respondents reference that, but a lot of these kind of are very different. We can see really it's only 1 response. This word cloud's mostly useless. We can see here the ideas that people are mentioning is kind of more loose. We see some mentioning with food and culture. We see some people saying rhythm games, they are popular with them. Popular places. A lot of the key one for lace market seems to be the idea of a rhythm game. It's just more interesting to them, which seems to have the main driving point to it. There is also the lace market seems to have a richer history, which isn't fully wrong. Yeah, there's also obviously the exchange, because comparing the old and modern versions, that's the one really popular one we see with the exchange. We see some kind of useless responses, and we see some kind of neutral responses where it's just I'm more interested in it than the others. We can see the negatives here. We see some things like the exchange is the least popular to them. Couldn't remember it. Don't know. Don't like dressing up games. Kind of these ideas that the area itself or the mechanic is just less interesting. Specifically, the mechanics show up the most, meaning I think those are the most influential thing on people's choices. I think a lot of the people here, because especially since they're around Nottingham so much, focus less on these areas and more on the ideas being presented by the mechanics. The top rating for the games out of 10, it varies between 8 and 9, whilst the ratings for people ranking lower generally ranks between 3 and 5. We can see 1 ranked 10 there and 1 ranked 9 here. We ranked 9 here again. Eden, and then I think they rated the other one in 9. Yeah, that was just them going for it quickly. So overall, we know that the lace market response is the most popular, mechanic-wise and area-wise. So we can continue now. So we can see here I've got the analysis of it. Roughly good here. We also then have our rhythm game conversation. So this is what we actually put up on the form, but there is a deeper analysis if you wish to go find it on the website. If I go up and up and up and up and up a second, if I can find it, the website's so laggy currently, maybe see. But we can see right here we've added descriptions of the games themselves and how the games work and what their main unique selling points are, especially within their own rhythm game genres. There are quite a few conversations here, especially about things like parappa, and maybe some of the difficulty is a bit out of date now, and that we can really analyse it under a more critical lens, but still understand why the mechanics don't age poorly, which is why these two are in specific, because this game is so similar, but ultimately they are the slight differences and the mechanics showing that they don't really age poorly. We also have the DDR and Friday Night Funkin' analysis, which mostly mentions gameplay, and the idea is that modability is also incredibly important. Unique selling points are also really important. DDR's entire success is based on the fact it's an incredibly unique way of playing games. We're just going to drag that off the screen again. We're going to go back to analysing some of this stuff here. So yeah, we have these options for rhythm games. So we can have a types of rhythm game here. So we have the overview PowerPoint photo again. Shortened. People who are actually rating don't need to understand their full analysis here. They just need to understand the basic outcomes. We understand the full analysis and we'll implement it once we come to make it. So we rate the array-based rhythm idea, we base the repetition/bar rhythm idea, and we rate the gimmick one. All of these are out of 5. We could have done the same system as the actual ranking, but this also works. We can see that people got through this really quickly. Rate the array-based rhythm game idea. Average rating of about 2 really overwhelms to 1, but because of how many are really much higher, it's fine. It averages out to about 2 to 3. The repetition/bar one averages out about 3, and it's about 3. It's far more middle like extremes heavy here than the top one. The top one has 1 extreme heavy, and then it kind of all dips down to a medium, whilst this one they're constantly dipping up and down. And then finally here we can see a much stronger, much heavier choice here. We can see the 5th option's incredibly, like a level 5 option's incredibly strong, despite the fact it only came out as 3.6, just because there's so many of these other ratings, 6, 5, 2, 4, 3. Whilst these, they're just a bit more varied, they're all over the place. But that means the gimmick option was overall the most popular by people understanding this image here. Again, this is a more simplified version, so we could probably try to describe it a bit further and see if people would change their opinion, but I doubt they would. So we now have, this is an old rating, we now have the 30 plus raters. We have style sheet here. We do a very simple style sheet in terms of art style. We're very heavily being inspired by quite a few rhythm games at the time, so we're looking at very heavily specifically Rhythm Heaven and The Rapper are the 2 styles I'm thinking of analysing and using the most. This kind of sketchy art style is the one that shows up the most, really. It's either that, simple 3D models, or quite a bit of, like... What's the word I'm looking for? I'm having trouble with words currently. There's another style, but I can't think of it. Oh yeah, like anime or like very, like cleaner styles. Much cleaner styles, but it's one of those kind of freestyles normally. We also have a bit of colour compensation here and the animation type. So we know we're going to have 3 states. We need idle, we need a action, and we need a pre-action. So we need to have an idle, we have to have the ability to tell players when actions are about to begin, and we have to tell players, or we have to respond to players' action. We also are going to probably base our colours mostly off pride, though I don't know if they're all going to be based off of pride, specifically for things like backgrounds and stuff. It's probably going to be better just base it off of more realistic colour schemes. Speaking of backgrounds, we have a couple here that were asked about. Style sheet showed up a bit less in questioning, probably because it showed up more as an idea of the rest of the games analysing and then seeing how people responded to the sprites. But we have housing here. We have the housing back area, tram and Tesco's area, the square, the contemporary. These are all for the menu backgrounds and like the game background. So if we go to the background look, you can see here the actual background look is being rated between housing, tram, the square and the contemporary. We have people ranking here. And then we ask people to summarise why they think their top choice seems the best of them. We have a reverse one. If we actually go in here, we'll see housing is the top. Contemporary's actually only got 1 in its bottom. The contemporary actually averages between the middle 2. Kind of a nuisance for how it ranks it. It's kind of annoying. We're going to have to find the other one that we did last time. But ultimately, so we have housing at the top, meaning housing 1, the overall background look. But we asked people why they chose this area. So, most iconic area of Lace Market. Unique and important area to Nottingham. It's cool, main area. Someone just said no, which is again a useless response. We're going to get a couple of useless responses, meaning if we have a text question, it's probably going to be more important to get as many responses as possible to mitigate the useless responses, and lots of important areas are not even nestled there. This is more basing it off of people who know this area, so we had to really rank this off of people currently in Nottingham. We couldn't ask people, say, in the US, why they think these areas are important to later market, because this is a simple question. So we specifically ask people currently living in Nottingham or actively travelling to Nottingham. We then do the very similar question. This time it's just menu background. We don't actually ask people to respond with their reason why. And here we see doodle-doo. It's going to load up. So the top area here, housing/back area, contemporary. Contemporary kind of leads here. It kind of sticks up, stays at the top. It's the most popular area overall. So we know the contemporary is the most popular for a menu background. There is one final thing. So we, for the essays and questionnaires, so if I bring up my website again, we are going to be able to see something specifically here. If I scroll down, we have here a collection of sprites based on the art styles that we were looking at. This one's more Rhythm Heaven, and these ones were slightly more a mixture of Rhythm Heaven and Parappa the Rapper. They much looser lines, but also kind of stronger, much less soft. So we ended up asking people what their favourite out of those selections were. Now this is probably the longest or second longest questionnaire form we had. So we asked if people between the ages of 16 to 25. There's very few responses to this, but 16 to 25, we asked people, and it's a bit of a stupid wording, it probably shouldn't have been worded like that at the time, but from being scary and 10 being, from 1 being scary and 10 being kittens and puppies, how friendly does the sprite drummer look? So how overall friendly / soft / kind of like unaggressive, kind of welcoming does the sprite seem to people? We then asked them what their favourite colour scheme is, based on the colour schemes that we designed, which was bisexual, lesbian / sapphic, trans, non-binary, and the pride / rainbow. We then put them in a order and asked people to rate the different frames and where they think they show up. Would this be idle? Would this be active? Would this be penultimate action? We then asked the same for the other character, which is the majorette. So this one was the drummer, this one was the majorette. We asked them to rate their favourite colour scheme, same colour schemes here as the last one. We then put them in a different order and asked people to rate them here. This time it's penultimate, active, and idle. We then asked which of the two sprites was closer to the key inspirations. Rhythm Heaven, here we mentioned Tatsu no Tatsujin, which actually didn't show up in the sprite sheet, but Tatsu no Tatsujin is Taiko no Tatsujin. Is a rhythm game based on this kind of style and uses drums instead. If you don't know this, I would recommend it, though it gets very difficult very quickly. But it's, again, that aggressively friendly style. Similar to Parappa the Rapper, Rhythm Heaven, again, Taiko no Tatsujin. We then ask for any notes, and then we just thank people for their participation. So here we have 4 responses, about 1:40 on average completion. Yes, with 1 being scary, we have an average rating of 8 here, with 1 in 7, 1 in 10, and 2 in 9. I'm sure this would actually be closer to a 9 or 10 if it would have had more responses, but because the lack of responses, 1 in 7 brings it down below a 9. We then ask for people's favourite colour scheme, bisexual on this one, with the trans colour scheme then coming in second with 1 rating. This question is a bit simpler, it's just which sprite type we're going to use. Put these options in order of where they appear in the photo, and everybody got it correct, meaning that the sprite actually does communicate what it's meant to communicate quite well. Here we see a more average rating of 6, but really that's just because it's super spread out. We have 1 in 2, we have 1 in 10, we have 1 in 6 at 7. I think this one would orientate towards more of a 6 or 5 if there were more responses to these forms, but I could be wrong. It could all drip into 2 again. But then we ask people to choose their favourite colour scheme, And this one was much more split. We had 2 for trans, we had 1 for pride/rainbow, we had 1 for non-binary. We then asked people to put them in order of what they think the sprite conveys. This was a bit rougher for people. We had 1 person get penultimate action and 1 person get active wrong, meaning that they kind of probably got that wrong, but 2 people both got the idle animation wrong, meaning, I don't really know how you do that. Wait, what? Oh, I see. And after. But, yeah, that means these communicate the question idea a lot weaker. We then ask which is closer to the key inspirations. The Rhythm Heaven, for like Rhythm Heaven, again, Taiko no Tatsujin. Again, that's typo, I need to change that. But the answer ended up being 3-1 drummer to majorette. Again, we should have probably had a bigger data set, but we couldn't sort that out at the time, so we're going to have to go off of this. I'd assume if you expanded it, the majorette might have closer to a third of the split rather than a quarter. But the drummer, I think, was still staying on top. And then we ask for any extra details. We say get a nah, not applicable, looks good, and looks good. So basically a non-answer on all fronts there, but that's fine. Finally, for the video of the pre-production, we're going to look at timekeeping. So timekeeping we kind of started with here. We started looking at the idea of a bit later on in the project, just the get we started making it. We'd gotten the basic inputs in at the time, but we're going to go over this now, and we're going to do the basics, and then we're going to talk about the goals for the bit after this, what it would be. So we currently have a color-coded scheme here: work plus college, busy but not recurring, and free. Meaning, or free to do anything, might be free and recurring, like Monday always is. Monday can't have a thing on it, unless it's a busy but non-recurring. Work and college can be, is really only going to occur once or twice on the same day. College, always the same day, so you could just set them up to recur with work plus college sometimes coming up. Work changes around a week because I work on a certain amount of hours but not certain amount of days. Certain amount of days, not certain amount of hours, and it's a bit more complicated than that. And busy but not recurring is just plans that show up over time. The main thing we need to look at really with timekeeping here is less about that over-analysis and that we have to keep it super exact to what day we're doing what. We have to know what our next main goals are with the prototype and where we want to get to with it. So by this point, the main goal after the pre-production and getting all these sprites ready were to integrate them into a game and try to get a basic input system using a spacebar that would trigger a 1-0 display and a point system working. Maybe delays to where they can and can't do it. So that will be the end of the pre-production part of the videos. This one took much longer than normal. It's going to take a minute to edit, so I hope this was informative.